What is going on, everyone? I am Mike. Welcome to Network Podcast. It's been a minute since we've talked last. I'm really glad to connect with you again today. I am joined by my co-host, Holden DePardo. Holden, how are we doing today?
I'm doing very well. It's good to be back. It's good to talk to you. It's got a lot to talk about this week.
We do have a lot to talk about, but Holden, how is everything going? We haven't talked in a minute.
Yeah, it has. It's been a long time. I'm actually in Texas right now visiting family, so that's fun. Kind of a change of setting from being stuck in a single place for too long.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you're in Texas. How's the weather?
It's been awesome.
Nice.
It felt like it snowed every single week in the weeks leading up to my trip, and just not having to shovel has been an absolute joy.
Yeah,
I love snow. Hate shoveling. Oh, it's the worst.
Totally. And you know, for those times when you think about shoveling, you're like, I want to go buy a snowblower, and you're like, no, I'm only going to use it 2 or 3 times a year, and you kick yourself in the ass all the time.
Oh.
Like, I should have bought it, and every year it happens the same way. You're like, oh, maybe I'll buy it this year. No, I don't. I don't want to spend the money. But then it snows really bad, and you're in the same predicament. You're like, gosh. So,
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm also like a larger dude, and meaning out of shape. So like if I shovel, it just knocks the hell out of me. It's an absolute beating every time.
That is so funny. That is so
So
funny.
like I
know how
should
that
get a
is.
snowblower.
You're right, because it's total physical exertion when you're shoveling snow, and especially there's many people I think who end up getting they end up having some type of physical ailment when they're shoveling snow because of the exertion that comes out on the body.
Yep.
But it saves your back. It probably saves a good portion of your cardiovascular system because most people who need a snowblower, when you're middle-aged man like myself, you're not in the best shape. You probably should buy it because you don't want to have a heart attack on the driveway. So
Probably not. Yeah,
No,
never. I mean, not at any point really.
yeah, it doesn't matter. I guess you're right. It doesn't matter if you're middle-aged, but it does matter. Just you don't want to have a heart attack.
Yeah, or it's on the driveway. Like it's not like driveways. Like it's like the worst place to get a heart attack is the driveway.
Yeah,
Every other place is like mediocre. It's like all right, it's a fine place to have a heart attack.
Sometimes I'm like, when you have a child or when you have a kid, I know you don't have kids, but like your first kid, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do so many things to prepare for my kid. Like I have to, I want to see him grow up and all this other stuff. And you're like, I don't want to die like on the toilet or anything. Like that would be just like embarrassing. Like my kid finds me on the toilet. Like what's going to go on? That's one of the many thoughts I had becoming a father a few years ago. So it's quite an adventure. Quite an adventure.
Well, I really hope that you do not have a heart attack on the toilet.
Oh my God.
I'm praying for you.
Thank you, Holden. Thank you. That would be horrible. Well, we do have a lot to talk about. So it's been a few weeks since we talked, and a lot has transpired in terms of Apple just like killing off products. They're like, hey, guess what? You die, and you die, and you die. They did kill a lot of products. So let's talk about, I guess, so what what we actually know. So we'll talk about news first, if that's okay. So first thing was Apple canceling off the iMac Pro. In terms, and not announcing anything new. It's 4 years old. So Apple released the iMac Pro in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and that was really after years of, I want to call it abandoning Pro users, but not giving them anything to really work with other than a promise that we're coming out with a new product which would be the Mac Pro. And I think it was a stopgap. I don't know how you would describe it, but I think that's how I would call it, as a stopgap, because it was really built on an existing platform, obviously the iMac, and but it was more beefier. That's I guess the end of it. Well, Apple killed that and says, hey, guess what? You're going bye-bye, because it really hasn't been updated significantly in terms of product refresh in 2 or 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. And we had talked about this maybe in text, but this thing is gone now. So I think at that $5,000 price point, I don't know. What are your thoughts on whether this will come back to the lineup as a new M1 iMac, or is it going to be gone and they're going to be just the Mac Pro that keeps it on?
Yeah, it's honestly, I think, impossible to say for sure what's going to happen here with a kind of pro Mac lineup, considering the huge transition that we're seeing right now from Apple, but you're right. Like they hadn't been updating it very frequently. I actually just jumped on Wikipedia really quick to kind of see what was said there, and it looks like on March 19th, 2019, they added some additional graphics card options, and then August 2020, they got rid of the 8-core model. And the 10-core model was the new default. So I think they probably weren't selling a lot of these to begin with, and on top of that, I imagine that whatever M series chip they're going to put in their desktop class computers will already be significantly powerful, that maybe they didn't feel like they needed to offer the iMac Pro anymore, or even just a Pro version of the iMac in general. But again, like it's hard to speculate and know because we don't really know what the landscape of Mac is going to look like with their kind of new vision that they have, that they're still working on. But I feel like they would have kept it around if they had seen some sort of future in a Pro version of the iMac. But we'll see.
Those are all very valid points. I think maybe in the beginning it sold very well because there was like pent up demand for this type of machine, even though it was I think it was like $5,000 to start, and you could max it out like somewhere in the neighborhood of like $25,000 if I'm not mistaken. But it is interesting that, you know, once there was that immediate horizon on when the Mac would come out, that they said that maybe sales slumped. I don't know, like there's something appealing about buying an all-in-one, whether it's an iMac Pro or maybe just a regular, just like a Mac Pro with a built-in computer or a built-in screen. But I do find it interesting that that price point of $5,000, because you now the next price for the Mac Pro is $5,900 if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's $6,100 for the Mac Pro. I think that's where it starts. Apple.com. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, it's like $5,000, $6,000, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not. No, I don't want to go to appleid.apple.com. Thank you.
No, reset your password right now. It's a great time to do it.
Well, it was a great time for my computer to take a dump right before this call. It's like, hey, guess what? No audio for you. Let's see here. So the Mac Pro, yes, I know it's a cheese grater, blah, 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 buy. I guess that kind of raises an interesting question that does this mean, maybe not to you or I or to professionals in the market, but does this mean that Apple sees professionals as only having computers that are after sale configurable, maybe is how I would phrase it, $59.99 or $64.99. So the Tower version $5,999 and the rack version $6,500, which is not, it's a lot of money. Does Apple see, you know, the Pro user as someone who's only going to update their devices after the fact? Build out their devices or upgrade their devices after the fact? Because I think there is a market for people who might want to buy the most powerful computer that Apple has, but don't want to spend that, you know, upper tier of, you know, $6,000. They want a display. They want, you know, one neck to choke when something breaks, not just now for no reason. That is interesting. That's my thought on it, though. Like, I would see someone who has maybe not unlimited funds, but they have money to spend and they want the best. They're not going to buy a Mac Pro, right? Because it has that higher price tag, which, as irresponsible as you can be with money, there's no point in spending money when you don't have to on this price. I don't know. What do you, anything special?
I mean, Apple's just always had like a weird thing with professional devices in quotes. Like, I mean, what's professional about the iPhone models or the iPhone Pro models versus the normal models? Like, what is the line of Pro versus just like, I want a fancier Apple product? For a lot of people, it's harder to determine. I think in, you know, desktop computers, even laptop computers, there's a more clear line. Mm-hmm. But Apple's always been kind of weird about the Pro moniker. So it's weird. Like, I can just see them releasing a new iMac and then just saying, hey, this is a great device for professionals and consumers alike, and rolling with it. And then I can see them doing exactly what you're kind of saying before, which is pros don't need this all-in-one device. They want a separate tower computer that they connect their own monitor and all that into. I can kind of see it going any way. I think this is very much a wait and see moment.
Yeah. You bring up an interesting point about what is Pro in this context, and maybe there's some muddying in the waters between the iMac Pro and the Mac Pro, right? Because if Pro is meant to be, it's the best of the best, right? There's no clear delineation between an iMac Pro and a Mac Pro because they both say Pro. Like in the MacBook Pro, you have the MacBook Pro. You don't have the MacBook Pro Plus or the MacBook Pro Max or whatever they want to call it, which is, you know what I mean? Like they don't have that muddying, but here you have two desktop computers with a very, very similar name. And I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
There's no like iMac Pro Plus. It's 40 inches in size and offers something functionally different than the other ones outside of beefier components, or what was beefier components.
And if you think about that, if you apply that same line of thinking about, it's not necessarily that it has the cameras or the keyboard or the processor. It's really just the best in that class. Whether it's computer, phone, tablet. You start to kind of get a better picture of, okay, well, now I see that they're talking about this is the best, right? That you can, if you want to spend top dollar, and then this is really for the majority of other people. This is, So maybe that's the iMac and then the Mac Pro. It would be interesting if they just had a Mac. And I think Mark Gurman from Bloomberg did talk about there was a new quote unquote Mac Pro coming out this year that was smaller in size, that was built on M1, but I don't think that is in the show
it's like
notes.
two Mac Minis stacked on top of each other, kind of, was like the pitch for it.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. That's the Mac Mini. Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking about that. So it is interesting. I wonder if, so do you think with this much, so this happened on March 3rd. That was the day that Apple canceled the iMac Pro. Do you think that it's possible that there's so much runway in front of this, whatever new product it's going to be, that it's something that we wouldn't see in this quote unquote, spring release? Or is this something that we're going to see maybe in, maybe WWDC or even later? It just seems like, sorry, I'll let you finish or start.
No. Like I'm gonna be a broken record this whole conversation, I think, but it's like it's so hard to know what the roadmap is going to look like. We're in that wait and see moment, but especially with Macs, because they've like iPhones, iPads, Apple Watch. These products have a pretty typical release time frame. We're going to see a new iPhone and a new Apple Watch in like the September-October time frame. You don't have that as much with Macs, especially when it comes to Pro models. It feels like or ones being hyperbolic, of course, but like there's just huge gaps. It's hard to know. But to kind of hint at, or sort of be talking about it a little bit, with the 21.5 inch iMacs having the 512 and 1 terabyte SSD options going away, I'd imagine at least iMac is going to see something pretty soon. I have a hard time imagining they would get rid of those options for the 21.5 inch iMac to not replace it with a new iMac relatively soon. That just seems strange to me. But Mac Pro, I think, is impossible to guess. I mean, their release cadence on Mac Pro has been all over the place. When they release a new one, it seems like it's a brand new form factor.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sorry about that, the interruption. It was the live stream kicking on for some reason. But you're absolutely right. I do think that maybe we can talk about that in just a second. The iMac getting certain configurations discontinued, and those are upper or higher configurations. It would make sense that we would see those new iMacs relatively soon. We had the discussion about the colors a couple of weeks ago, where they had the different the throwback to was it not the GQ but the original iMac?
Yum.
Yeah, Yum, the 2009 iMac. I don't know, like it feels like Apple is maybe clearing the deck, right, for things that they're going to announce very soon. Like they're like, okay, let's get all the swirl out of the way first of canceling out these products, and then we're just going to release the Kraken, so to speak, and there'll be like this big swarm of new products that come out. As an enthusiast, I think that's great, but who knows whether that's actually going to be the case.
Absolutely. I'd imagine it's soon. I had this feeling it's gonna be soon. And frankly, when I first read the story, I thought we would have heard something by now. So at this point, I'm kind of just
Yes.
waiting every day, like when is this gonna happen? Because the thing about Apple's supply chain is that when you buy a Mac or really buy any Apple product, it's generally made within the past week.
Yes.
That they don't keep on, they don't keep hold of inventory very long. They have that completely ironed out. That's actually what Tim Cook's genius coming into the company was. He used to work for Compaq in the 90s, and Steve Jobs brought him in to specifically work on the supply chain. So this is kind of, Tim Cook's bread and butter. That's what he's really good at. That's what he brought to the company. And so anyway, the point is their supply chains, their inventory period is extremely small. It's about a week before they get rid of new product they've made and sold it off. So I feel like if they made this choice, it's because they're planning on releasing something imminent. But the other possibility, to just kind of play with all possibilities here, is that maybe they want to keep those 512 and 1 terabyte options to the 27-inch iMac because you can still buy them there. And they only want to offer 256 gigabyte SSDs and the 1 terabyte Fusion drive to the 21.5-inch iMac. That's also possible. It also could be that there's the graphics card shortage that's happening right now. Maybe that's impacting hard drives too, possibly. And Apple thought the best place to sacrifice on their end would be to remove options for the 21.5-inch iMacs, but they plan on ushering them back in at a later point. That's highly speculative on my part. I don't know, but it's hard to know.
Yeah, you're right. It is strange that they did kill the configurations in the lower model or the smaller model, but left them still there in the upper model or the bigger model. Mm-hmm. I guess maybe we could safely say that this is the behavior that Apple is demonstrating is different than what they've done in the past. And to your point, really, there's not necessarily a clear, if X and Y, right, equals Z, they're not demonstrating that, and they don't necessarily have the same pattern of, we're going to kill this product, the day that we release a new product, or because typically they don't do this so far in advance. I actually don't know if I've ever seen this to that point.
Just thinking about it.
Unprecedented. Tim
we are
Cook,
in an unprecedented time right now, so who knows?
Yes, that maybe that's what it is. So it is interesting. I guess maybe there's a lot of things that Apple discontinued in the past few weeks. Not only did they discontinue the iMac Pro and some smaller, some configurations of the 21-inch iMac, but they also discontinued the beloved HomePod. I don't know what to think about this one, because it seems like they want to really love HomePod, but they don't know what it's meant for. That's the feeling that I get from HomePod, HomePod Mini, and really the time frame that there has been between updates, meaningful updates to that product. Though I do think it's strange that they just did all this work around supporting, like Atmos type of sound staging with the larger HomePod in home theater setups. I do think that's strange. And then they're like, oh, guess we're going to kill off the product a few months later. I don't know. That to me seems strange. And to me, it makes me question, like, what is Apple, where are they going with this? I don't want to call it living room, though I think that's probably the right term. Like this living room / music strategy or home strategy for the HomePod, and probably even the Apple TV, right? That's something else where you think about, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense where it's at. And I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I agree with you. I was very surprised to see that. We have known that HomePod it's not that it's been selling badly, but it hasn't been a landmark product like many of their other new products they've introduced within their lifetime. And I wouldn't be surprised if HomePod Mini just took them by storm and they realized, oh, we really should prioritize the HomePod Mini. What makes this strange is that now we have HomePod Mini compared to nothing. It's not Mini compared to anything. It's just the HomePod Mini just now is HomePod.
Yeah.
And it sounds really good. I did have the luxury of getting to list. My dad has one, so I'm visiting family. He has one, and I got to listen to a full-size HomePod, and it sounds fantastic.
It does.
It sounds noticeably better, I think, than a HomePod Mini. So it's not like there's not an advantage there. It just, I guess, it doesn't work out for Apple anymore.
So you know what's funny is I was reading, I was in one of those Twitter rabbit holes, reading about the day that this announcement came out, and someone had ordered one from Apple, or they ordered another pair like a day or two later, and when they got the home, or when they received the HomePod, there was some way they were able to check the manufacture date, and it showed that the manufacture date was still 2017, and they were like brand new, obviously in the wrapping. You know, he ordered them directly from Apple. So maybe they, I think it's probably safe to say is that this didn't perform to everyone's expectations, right? In terms of sales and adoption. But like your experience, I love my HomePod. It's right there behind me somewhere. You can see it there. It just seems like it was maybe overpriced unless you really knew what the value of like say the Apple Watch. Unless you really know what the value is, you're not like gonna I'm gonna go spend a couple $100 on a HomePod or spend a couple $100 on an Apple Watch. You really have to be in this ecosystem, be like, okay, this really makes sense for me, even though it might not be quote unquote the best of the best. It still makes it's the best in class experience if you're in the ecosystem. Like, I can't tell you how frustrated I get using my Sonos with my home stereo system. I actually want to throw it away because it makes me so mad because you can't control, or at least I haven't been able to figure it out. That maybe that's the problem. Every time I try and control the volume, it like turns it up to 15, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not what I wanted. So I have to have like 4 remote controls to try and control the volume of my TV. It's super frustrating, but I digress. I hoped that there is something maybe along the lines of maybe not a home stereo component, but a component where you can have like those two, the left and right rear speakers, and maybe like a center channel connected to your Apple TV, which would maybe drive some type of Dolby Atmos type setup. I would really like that, because the two HomePods, when I connected them to my my Apple TV in my living room, they sounded great. So that's something that I really liked.
Yeah, they definitely, just in general, need to have grouping. Regardless if it's Atmos or anything, they just need to have grouping. I think it'd be really important. I wonder how much this has to just simply do with form factor as well. I don't know this for sure. I'm just kind of spitballing here. But I recall back when the iPod Mini came out, iPod Mini is what really helped, or was at least I think a large contributing factor to the the iPod's success, because the size. There really wasn't a huge price difference between iPod Mini and just the regular iPod. It was really the size that was in the colors that was a distinguishing factor. And I wonder if people just thought the HomePod was too big and they didn't want to put it in their house. But HomePod Mini can just kind of be thrown anywhere.
Yeah.
It's so small and unintrusive. I'm curious if that played into this. Not to disregard the price difference, because you're right, the price difference is huge, and $300 for a sound system is a lot of money when most people do not care about sound quality to the extent that they would care about screen resolution, for example.
Yeah. A couple other things that just makes me think of this is that, I know I've talked about it before, but I had the hopes that there was some type of Apple Music Plus, that's what I would call it, where there's some like kind of high fidelity service where Apple was using high quality streaming. With this going away, it could signal, I guess, either way, that either Apple doesn't believe that there is a market for it, or that product itself was not capable of it. The one thing I do know that, maybe a year ago, or it seems like it's 5 years ago, because that's how long it's been. But Apple joined this home automation, I think it's called the Home Automation Alliance, with Google and Amazon, where one of the underlying layers of connectivity inside of home automation accessories is something that they call Thread. And the HomePod Mini has Thread. I don't know why I'm putting over there, because it's not the HomePod Mini, but the HomePod Mini does support Thread, but the original HomePod did not, because of obviously when it came out. It would be interesting if they were going to support this in future versions of this larger speaker, because that is something where, do you have hue lights or do you anything like that?
Yeah, I do.
You know how you have to have that puck? It's not a puck. It's a box actually. That box that you have to connect to your home internet or to your LAN in order for it to work. It's basically a bridge. Thread replaces that, or it's my understanding that it replaces that. So there are many obviously incentives to do that, and hopefully that whenever this comes out in scale, that there is the support for Thread on these new speakers, because that would be great, because it's like zero configuration networking. That is basically it can do.
That would be huge, because that would take a lot of the headache out of this kind of stuff. Absolutely.
I hate those little boxes. I hate them.
Oh, they're horrible. They're horrible. Especially if you reset your network too. But at least for me, whenever I have to reset my network, I feel like I have to then wait to be able to turn my lights on and off an extra amount of time, because the network is working, but the bridge hasn't connected in. It's just, I don't know. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah,
I also just need more wires. I just want less wires. I'm curious. This is just kind of a random thought, but do you feel like they would release like a $200 HomePod that still looks exactly like the HomePod Mini? Maybe it's a little bit bigger, and that has a subwoofer and bass in it, or do you think we're really just only gonna have HomePod Mini, and that will just be rebranded HomePod?
I do think that they would release something that is a larger size HomePod that offers a way to compare and contrast the features of HomePod Mini and this larger size HomePod, because that's what they do typically, right? They don't. There's not many times where they release a single product. They always have a pair of products to compare and contrast the differences between them. I mean, like think about Apple Watch,
it's a very Tim Cook Apple thing to do.
Yeah, like because you want to be able to do a good, better, best comparison, and you want people to ladder up into that buying. This is good, but I want to be aspirational and buy like the best. When you think about the Apple Watch Edition, and the Apple Watch, what was the first one called? The Apple Watch Sports or the Sports Band? The Sport, right?
I forgot it was called the Apple Watch Sport. Yeah.
And then they even did like a Nike edition for, they always want to compare and contrast those. And I think that they would do the same thing with the, whatever that next version of the HomePod is, right? They would do like one with one speaker or one set of speakers, another one with another set of speakers, and then maybe something to compare and contrast would be the best version of it.
Yeah, I think HomePod Pro would be a good lineup, because I think obviously HomePod Mini on its own doesn't make any sense. I think HomePod Pro would work. I think because it lines up with AirPods Pro, iPhone Pro, iPad Pro. Like it just lines up perfectly with the product line.
So that is interesting. Like the mini regular and the Max version. To jump back just 5 seconds, if you think about what if they had a Mac Mini, a Mac, and then a Mac Pro, like if they introduced something in that middle tier just called the Mac. That'd be interesting.
I would like that, to be honest. I feel it feels weird having products in Tim Cook's Apple now. I mean, obviously iPhone, iPad won't go away. But in terms of Macs, we've had MacBook forever now.
Yep.
I think just calling it Macintosh would be really cool, even, or just Mac is fine too.
That brings maybe an interesting side point. When will when will they drop the numeric identifier for the phone, or because they don't have it for the iPad, or they maybe have it in a different iteration, like they don't have it for the Mac. Why do it for the phone still?
Yeah, I ask this question every year. I don't understand it. I think it makes it more confusing. If they just said, here's the 2021 iPhone.
Yep.
It's the new iPhone. I think that'd be way... I don't think people generally go in to an iPhone because it's the new number or something like that. I think we're kind of past that point. The only caveat to that is Apple generally doesn't sell old iPads. They generally don't sell old Apple Watches. Well, actually, they do sell old Apple Watches. They generally don't sell old Macs, and they refresh the lineup completely every year. Whereas iPhones, they will keep the 10R, or it'll go down a tier. The 11 will go down a tier. Excuse me, the 12 will go down a tier. So maybe that's why they don't want to do it, because then you'd be like talking about these products in terms of, which iPhone do you want to buy? Do you want to buy the 2017 iPhone, or do you want to buy the 2018 iPhone? People are like, whoa, what's the difference? But if you put a name to it, like 10R or 11, then maybe they think that'll be an easier conversation, which I can totally understand. But they should just, I don't know, it'd be simpler, I think.
No, there's a good point. I didn't think about that, about the conversation in the store, right? Where because they because each year when a new iPhone comes out, they still keep the old versions for sale. It's easier to compare and contrast those versions against the new iPhone because it has a specific model name. And you bring up a good example, like, I want the iPhone from like 2018. But wait, what? Like that's just a weird conversation piece. That that's a good understanding, because even when you buy like even if I have an iPad, I want to go buy the original iPad the day after the new one comes out, or the previous generation. You can't go and buy it at the Apple Store. It's like it's like it never existed, and all they do is to have support articles, and you can only buy the new one going forward, which is kind of strange. Yeah, which is kind of strange.
They do offer a huge lineup of iPads that like across the spectrum of prices. Maybe one day they will do that with iPhones, where they'll have the SE model of that year's iPhone, and they'll have iPhone mini will be the next cheapest option, then iPhone Pro, and then iPhone Pro Max. And they'll just kind of space them out more, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. That's a good point. Good point. So we talked about let's cancel some products. We had all the different products that Apple canceled in the past few weeks. Anything else we want to cover here in terms of news, or anything else that you can recall? Or anything else maybe you're passionate about?
Just really quickly, a little while ago in the conversation, you mentioned high quality audio.
Yeah.
And Spotify did announce that this year they're going to have Spotify Hi-Fi.
Yeah.
And I would really, really like to see that come to Apple, not just Apple Music, but iTunes as well. I think that would be huge, especially if it, like whenever Apple released HD movies or 4K movies, as soon as that 4K movie is available, if you had The Dark Knight and a 4K version comes out, then you just have the 4K version of The Dark Knight. I would like to see that with music too, where it's like I bought all these songs, now I have the whatever lossless equivalent or whatever they end up doing version of that song. I think that would be cool to see in my iTunes library, and then also in Apple Music.
Yeah, I think so. Part of that process, or part of that offering, is that there are places that you can buy high quality audio, but you can't buy high quality audio on iTunes, and I don't. So I think Spotify Hi-Fi specifically is probably streaming, or it is streaming. But there are people like who own high quality audio, like I think it's MQA is the codec. But it would be very cool that there was this high quality version of songs that you could hear where you had a better bit rate or better experience while listening to. I don't know if there is. I think people would certainly use it, and I would like to hear like high quality audio from Apple, like on my AirPods, like or my AirPods Pro or my AirPods Max, because that's the perceived value that I have these these new headphones that should be able to pick out the finer details of this music, but unfortunately they don't have it. I don't know. There's this whole I have this whole idea going in my mind about like high quality audio and why Apple is just not why they're not bringing it, or why it's not out for them, because it is something when you think about their music offering against other other competitors, or their competitors like Spotify and Amazon. I don't remember the name of Amazon's high fidelity music service right now, but they're really like the only people. Just from the outside looking in, even if you don't care about high quality audio, it's a gap that you would say, okay, well, Apple doesn't have this. Maybe I shouldn't choose Apple Music or whatever the case is, and choose Spotify. So that to me is interesting. Yeah. So I like music, but I don't know if I like music that much where I would pay for, like I would never own high quality audio because I think I think music right now is a commodity or not commodity, but it's like streaming where, I just want to indulge and listen to music when I want to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to own the Beatles high fidelity tracks or whatever the case is. But maybe I would buy like some some like Marshmello, really like high quality tracks to listen to on a good set of speakers. Do you like Marshmello?
Yeah. Not particularly, no.
Oh, you don't like Marshmello? Okay, I thought you would like it because it's electronic music.
I'm so picky about music.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to house music. That's pretty much it. But like, I don't want to say listen to more like, I guess I listen more to the kind of the John Digweed kind of sphere of house music.
Yeah, I got you there. So more like
I just have very specific taste. That's all.
Okay. So like Sasha Digweed, that's like trance, right?
It's like yeah, in like the '90s it was trance, but it's kind of turned into progressive house. And
okay.
Yeah, I mean, like to get an idea, my favorites are like Jeremy Olander is a favorite, Brian Sid is a favorite. I kind of like that sphere. Yodo is pretty good.
Oh, I never heard of Yodo. Okay, let's talk about. Let's move on to rumors, and let's talk about some new iPads, new iPad Pros that are hopefully on the horizon. So we have talked about it, I think at length, about some type of spring event coming. And I don't know if you happen to see this, it's not in the notes, but there is a YouTuber, his name is Jon Prosser. Do you ever heard of him?
Yeah, I've heard of Jon Prosser before.
Okay, so he has been talking about how there's going to be a March 23rd event, and we know March 23rd, I think, was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
It happened. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
And we're done.
So Jon Prosser was very adamant, along with several other prominent Apple leakers, that there was an Apple event happening on March 23rd, which was yesterday. And he was so adamant that he said, if Apple doesn't hold an event on March 23rd, I'm going to shave off my eyebrows. And lo and behold, this dude shaved off his eyebrows. I mean, props to him for doing it. And, he did it in such a way that he raised money for some childhood charity or some child charity, where the money is being donated to children who have they're affected with some type of either disease where they can't grow hair. So it's very noble that he did it and followed through with it. So I give him props for that. But supposedly now there is an Apple event where next month, in the very next week or so, where they're going to release some new iPads, hopefully some new iMacs, which we'll talk about more in a moment, and maybe even a new Apple TV, things that we've been talking about here on the channel for about the last 4 or 5 episodes. Maybe we'll start with the iPad Pros. Now, I know you're not necessarily a big iPad user at this moment, but I can tell you I use my iPad Pro for everything. And what is really appealing about the new iPad Pros that are coming out is that there are going to be mini LED display. They're supposed to have Thunderbolt, which I find super interesting, and that there is supposedly some design changes to the Apple Magic Keyboard, or the Magic Keyboard for iPad, which is that is super interesting. Now, you don't run the betas, correct, on any of your devices until the actual spring cycle, right, or the fall cycle?
Yeah, whenever the 0.0 beta comes out for iOS 15 or something like that in the summer, I'll do that one.
So one of the interesting new things in the beta that should come out within a matter of a week or so, because they're at the final build, is that when you power on the iPad now, or when you power on the iPad Pro, the power on logo or the power on animation, instead of being in portrait mode, it's now in landscape mode. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, in my experience, it self-detects whether you're holding the iPad in portrait orientation or portrait or landscape orientation, which really makes me think that Apple is rethinking how to use the iPad, because in every other device that they have, you only see the Apple logo in that orientation because, or not because, when the camera, the FaceTime camera, is directly above, where you're at. So I would be super, and I'm gonna say super twice, super interested to see if these new iPad Pros are rethinking the FaceTime camera and they're moving it to that side of the iPad, or the side of the iPad where you normally have the Apple Pencil. I would be floored at that, because using your iPad for FaceTime or for Zoom or any type of video calls is so awkward, because you're like down and over to the left, and it doesn't make any sense for the context that most people use their iPads in nowadays with where we're at. Any thoughts there with the iPad, sorry?
Yeah, no, I think I have kind of two thoughts with the logo specifically. Is it finally kind of lives up to the vision of there's no wrong way to hold an iPad. There's no wrong way to hold an iPad until the Apple logo is upside down because you're turning it on and it's static. But I also use, this is the second point, I use my iPad in landscape mode always. I rarely use it in portrait. Rarely, like very rarely. I mostly use my iPad to read. And when I take notes, like handwritten notes, I'll put it in portrait, but that's rare now. I started using Notion for notes, so I just type all my notes now. And so I just really haven't been using my iPad for anything other than reading, browsing, watching YouTube. All those things, for me, are better in landscape. And I feel like with the change in how iPad OS is being treated, it seems like landscape is a priority there too. Like you can only access the widgets on the home screen when you're in landscape mode. Like there's the Magic Keyboard only works in landscape mode. Like there's so many things where it's like they're clearly thinking about the iPad as a landscape device. It's about time they kind of made that kind of adjustment. Will they stick with the current layout just because? For consistency, not having to re-engineer on the inside too much, like I guess they could, but the iPad is a landscape device, I think, for at least for me and you, and I would assume other people.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about the widgets. Sorry, the name escaped me for a second. About using the widgets, and that widgets cannot be used when you are in portrait orientation. That is really interesting. I guess that begs the question. Even if they put the camera in the in the top of the iPad when it's in landscape, when it's in landscape orientation, where does the Apple Pencil go? Like, because the Apple Pencil on the iPad Pro is held there by magnets, and obviously I would assume that magnets and some type of camera don't mix together very well, and you'd have some type of interference.
Oh yeah. That's a really good point. My initial thought was, they'll just be on the top still. Why not? It'll just be on the top. But no, you're right. The camera, that would probably be a mess.
Yeah. Maybe they flip the point. They flip the point for where. I'm going to use my crude mock-up here. So instead of putting the Apple Pencil here like it is today, if you could see that, maybe they move it to over here on the side where the camera was.
Yeah.
That's the only other thing I could think of, because
you can't put it on overhang. It would overhang though, wouldn't it? I mean, on the iPhone it does obviously, but on an iPad it's a little bit wider than an iPhone is proportionally. I think it would still overhang on the sides. And I can also see Apple being really nitpicky about that.
Yeah.
I know it's a really small thing. It wouldn't actually matter that much. Although when you're putting it in a bag, that might be a problem. So maybe they'll put it on the bottom instead.
Yeah, or maybe
not the camera, the magnet for the Apple Pencil. But then how would that work with the Magic Keyboard?
Oh, you're right. So maybe it's on the back then. Like this. And then when you put it inside the Magic Keyboard, that area is still magnetized.
You said there's a new Magic Keyboard?
So that's one part of the rumors as well, where that supposedly they're coming out with a new Magic Keyboard. Like there was some patent that they won about 2 years ago where the pencil is, when you have it inside the Magic Keyboard, that this the Apple Pencil is stored inside of the spine of the Magic Keyboard. So in that area, I don't have my Magic Keyboard with me; it's behind me. The area where the cantilever hinges, so that's hollowed out by some design, and that's where it's stored. I mean, who knows? That makes sense, but I guess where I'm going with this is, if you're releasing new iPads that have this updated design, you probably want to have a keyboard that's going to be able to maybe not show off, but accentuate the new design or the new features with it as well. You wouldn't necessarily have it with the old Magic Keyboard. That just doesn't seem like it's Apple. They'd want to capitalize on the sale for both. Maybe that's the other way of thinking about it. And I guess the other thing I was thinking is that they're supposedly that the new iPad Pro is just a little bit thicker than the existing iPad Pro, which makes me think that, well, if it's thicker, because of the design of the Magic Keyboard, there's really not a lot of you couldn't play with the variance of closing the cover. It would, if it was thicker, it would actually kind of stick up a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it would.
So who knows? It's easier to accommodate a larger iPad with a new Magic Keyboard and have that backwards compatible with the existing ones, opposed to the other way around.
Yeah,
but who knows? Yeah,
maybe in April, or maybe John Prosser to shave his eyelashes again.
Dude, yeah. I watched the video this morning. I was like, holy cow! I can't believe he's doing it. But that was good stuff. It's so funny. You have to watch it. I'll send you the link. The other part of the rumor with the Magic Pro, the iPad Pro, is that there's the new A14XZ, whatever the case is. There's that new GPU where, so we don't. The only device that we have with a A14 GPU is the only iPad that we have is the iPad Air 4. Which in comparison, the iPad Air 4 is just about as fast as the, I'm trying to think here. It's just about as fast as the A13X, if I'm not mistaken. We really haven't taken off the wrapper of what the A14X is capable of, but I'm hoping that there's this kind of parallel universe where we have the M1 and the A14X, which are very similar in performance and kind of heat dissipation, where it gives you something that's considerably, I guess it's very similar in terms of performance. Now, for the most part, most people have an iPad and they never even have to use they never see the upper constraints of how fast or how good an iPad is. I don't know really what's the point of continuing to build out the iPad with these really these really powerful GPUs when majority of people don't even use their iPads for that type of functionality. Like, what's the master plan here, Apple?
I feel like we're at a point now where they need to, I've been talking about this for a little while now, which is just to continue to distinguish the Pro from the regular iPads, or in this case, the iPad Air. And power is a big way of doing that, but you're right. Like, if that power is just being put towards iBooks and, watching YouTube videos, it's completely pointless. And even drawing applications and Photoshop even on an iPad, I don't see it. I feel like it needs to get to a point where they start releasing either like Final Cut and Logic and like their Pro app suites with tailored versions for an iPad Pro. I think that's one thing that I would like to see. Excuse me, not in terms of me using it myself, but just in terms of being being a more versatile device overall, and for someone who's more creative. I also think there are some opportunities they could have for having companion devices. Didn't they used to have like a Logic remote app for iPad?
They still
where you could control Logic? They still do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool if you could do things like take the synths from Logic and control them, like the knobs and all that, from the iPad, but have it processing on the iPad, so like the workload is taken off of your Mac and they kind of interface together. I mean, you already have some sort of interface between iPad and Mac anyway, with Sidecar and any kind of functionality like that. Like, what if they baked that more into the Pro app ecosystem that they already created? I mean, I'd like to see, I'm not saying anything that's going to happen. I'm just saying I would like to see things like that, where they leverage the power in a way that creatives might find beneficial. Then I think they can earn that Pro, the Pro moniker, more than they have before already. Like, looking at the article here that we're referencing, they're saying the A14X is based on the M1 chip. It's a waste if it's just a faster processor with the same functionality. It's a total waste. There needs to be that next step for iPad. And considering the number of years that we've had iPad OS, it's time. It's time to kind of see what the iPad is really capable of.
Yeah. You bring up a lot of good points regarding Sidecar and using or being integrated with their own apps to do some additional, not functionality, but I guess functionality and functionality
companionship.
And companionship. There are some things in Sidecar that work really well with their iPads, but there are some things where, at least if maybe it's my specific workflow, but if I'm using Final Cut and I'm using my iPad as a secondary display, where the GPU just spikes up and it's almost to the point where it's unusable. I'm like, okay, I can't use this. This is not working very well for me. It would be typical of Apple, or in my mind, it would be typical. You can let me know what you think, where they would seed the market with these iPads that were super capable, only knowing that at a point in time they were going to release this new feature where they'd say, oh, and all those iPads that you've been buying for the past 4 or 5 years are already capable of doing it, like they did with the when they went from Intel to from PowerPC to Intel chips. They're like, oh yeah, and we've been running this for a year already. Like they had this like thing in their back pocket. I would like them to see that do that. Like they're like, oh yeah, guess what? Holden, all these workflows that we're talking about here, you can use it on your 2017 iPad Pro 10.5 inch. Like, oh wow, that's amazing, because you get this like renewed sense of usability with this product that you're like, oh, I kind of forgotten about it and thought that maybe I wouldn't have to upgrade.
Yeah, any device that has the Pro moniker can do this. Also includes, the most recent iPad Air, like that kind of thing. But like the regular iPad and the mini, maybe are more tailored to just iPad specific tasks or something like that. Yeah.
I wish that there was, maybe just kind of as a thought experiment sometime, think about like who, we talk about the iPad Pro, like who is this really for? Like where does Apple see this going? When you think about the moniker Pro, because for many people, it certainly can be a one-stop shop for their machine, but there are certain limitations right on the software side where they don't have that full feature functionality. Maybe that's something that they're going to reveal to us at a later point in time, or I don't know. It just seems like they want to continue to not ring out, but to take advantage of this strength that they have, because it's it's iPad and they have this kind of this wealth of people out there that already have these devices in their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And going to the whole Pro thing too, the whole idea of Thunderbolt coming to the iPad, that's awesome. But yes. For what? Obviously, there's more accessories you can connect to, which is a benefit. But what's the point if you're not doing anything extra with that? That's a lot of I/O.
Yeah. So. I don't think we've talked about this, but I recently got a Thunderbolt 4 dock, maybe a week or two ago. I'm looking at it right now. It's from OWC, and it's so the benefit of this is not only is it compatible with Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4 also brings the compatibility with USB 4, so it gives you a lot of the same throughput. With Thunderbolt 3 on Thunderbolt 4, and you get backwards compatibility you get forwards compatibility with USB 4. This would actually make a great dock for someone who wanted to connect a Thunderbolt display to their iPad and want to connect these different peripherals, Thunderbolt peripherals, to this already, because you have this dock and it's forwards compatible with new technologies, backwards compatible with existing technologies, and you don't have to wait for anyone else to see this, because it's already in the marketplace by other companies. It's actually really nice. The one thing I just haven't figured out yet, the 3.5 millimeter jack on the front of it, that interface doesn't work for me as consistent as it should, but that's a horse for another conversation. So if you think about ways of Apple differentiating their products, it would be really cool if they made some type of desktop dock port replicator for the iPad. That would be super cool. Like
you
the
can
Magic Keyboard. Sure. Yeah, you could, like, if quote unquote the new Magic Keyboard was a keyboard, but it had like some SD card reader built into it. If it had like a USB-C port built into it or additional USB-C port, that would be very cool. Holden, anything else that you want to add to that Apple rumor about the new iPads?
I think that covers the iPads.
Sweet. All right. Well, let's continue on and let's move on to a new Apple TV and a redesigned Apple TV remote. Holden, tell me how much you love the Apple TV remote. Do you love it?
It's okay.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh,
I do like the Siri functionality, so I'm hoping that doesn't go away based on this rumor.
Yeah, well, the Apple TV remote is probably a sense of hate for many, many people because the glass trackpad on the top, right? That and the fact that
that is confusing.
It
is confusing.
You pick it up and you really never know because it's just a rectangle. You never know which way you're holding it because the buttons are all like similar orientation. Like whether you're looking at it from the top side or from facing up or facing down, the buttons really look similar especially in the dark, right? That's probably the other part of it.
Yeah.
And you always use it wrong, and then you suddenly swipe over, and you're like you're rewinding in a movie. You're like, no, I didn't mean to do that. I digress because that's probably one of my pain points. But there is this rumor here that Apple is talking about, I would say, removing the Siri name from the remote, and hopefully coming out with a new remote. We've talked about this in the past where. We talked about this in the past where the Apple TV seems to be underpowered for many use cases that Apple has going today. Excuse me. Like it doesn't support HDMI 2.1 for 120 hertz. If you wanted to have some type of high frame rate gaming, if you wanted to launch a console like how we think that maybe Apple does, it doesn't support say Dolby Atmos, but the 7.1 stereo sound. There's a whole bunch of things. You can't do HDR video on it from, like, if you take an HDR video from your phone, if you AirPlay it to the Apple TV, it won't play that. So there's many things where there seems to be a gap. That doesn't make any sense to me at all, but
it doesn't.
I guess.
Yeah. You can look on your phone, but not your TV where HDR would be more beneficial, but whatever.
I don't even know if you can watch it on the iPad. That's actually even something else I just thought of.
That's even weirder.
Yeah, that's even weirder.
Like only the iPhone. Only iPhone. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know that. I'm going to have to check that when we're done. But supposedly that there's a new Apple TV remote and a new Apple TV coming along the lines. It would be nice because I think the Apple TV 4K, even though it does say 4K, it's a little bit long in the tooth from my perspective. Even some of the like the latency with when you're doing a workout on Apple Fitness, there just seems to be some smoothing out, which maybe could be done with a new processor, some new functionality.
Yeah. In terms of Siri remote, it also could just be a play to get the Apple TV to be cheaper, because that remote is expensive.
Oh, wow. You're right, it is. Yeah, I think it's like $100, isn't it?
Like $80, $100 or something like that. Yeah, it's a good percentage of the Apple TV price itself.
Wow. So what if they sold the Apple TV sans the remote? Would you use the existing remote?
Like, or would that be like an iPhone?
Oh. So I think using your iPhone is certainly an option, but it's not a great option in my opinion.
No, I agree. It's not a great option.
Huh. Like, I don't know what they would do here. Apple TV remote. Yeah, I guess other than the tidbit that they removed this naming convention, I think it does point to some type of updated remote, whether that's going to be a new remote that's going to come out with this or something maybe they're selling as a standalone. Man, it would be great if they sold this with this remote with a game controller. Sorry, I'm trying to bring that back.
Oh yeah. You can buy a DualSense controller, which is an unbelievably good controller, for the same price as a Siri remote. Seriously. Or in the ballpark. Seriously.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, that's a good show title. Seriously. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have an Apple TV 4 or an Apple TV 4K?
I have an Apple TV 4K.
Okay. Do you find, I guess, when using it, do you feel that there's any type of, not, I guess, drawbacks to using it in terms of performance, in terms of features?
I mean, I feel like it is a premium set-top box. I mean, you can get a Roku, you can get an Amazon, Fire Stick for significantly less than an Apple TV, and you can still access your Apple TV content on there. Although you can't rent movies, you can't buy movies either, but you can access your existing library and anything in Apple TV Plus. So it is like a premium experience, and I just feel like my main issue with Apple TV is just how expensive it is. I really think that I got it because I wanted a smoother experience on the television. I wanted to be able to use the touchpad to interact with it as opposed to clicking buttons. I wouldn't want to see that go away, but I think you're right. As we were talking about earlier, that the form factor could use some improvement, so it's clear which orientation is correct. But yeah, I mean, it's not that it's a bad experience. It's just that I just don't know if it's actually worth the price. That's my only drawback with Apple TV, especially the 4K version. Why does it cost more? They should just be one Apple TV and it scales. Doesn't make sense.
You're right, and I'm sorry for interrupting you there. In 2021, why do people have to buy the hardware Apple TV if it's so pervasively available on other platforms? You did mention something about not being able to buy content.
Yeah. I don't think you can, at least.
At least I have a television from Vizio that has the iTunes store built into it, or the movies built into it. You could buy content there, but you can't buy any apps. There's no apps to buy.
I know on Amazon Fire Sticks, and maybe this has changed, but on Amazon Fire Stick, I was able, I got my grandma a Fire Stick, and I set it up for her, and I just gave her my Apple TV account so she can watch stuff on there if she wanted to. And I remember being in her house, and I couldn't buy anything, I couldn't rent anything, but I could access my existing library.
I mean, that brings up a good point. What, as we talked about earlier, what is Apple's strategy for, quote, the living room / home, and how does the Apple TV play into it? Because is it $180 I think for 32 gigs?
Yeah.
And then that is quite premium. And if you're getting a remote that stinks, and the ability to buy apps, I don't know if that's a great value add, because I just bought the what's the name, the Chromecast 4K, which I think was maybe $50. Now it's not as good looking, right? I'll give them that, but it's 3/4 less expensive, which is interesting to say the least.
I'm looking at the price of the 4K version. I'm pretty sure it's 180. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, I think it's 180.
180, 32 gigs. Oh, that's ridiculous.
So the only other thing that you can't get is that one of the other things that you can't get is that you can't get HomeKit Secure Video on the competitors' versions. So if you plug in your Amazon Fire Stick or your Chromecast, even though it's enabled with the Apple TV service, you don't get like HomeKit Secure Video. You can't view the cameras inside the Home app. You can't AirPlay from there. So I guess that is one advantage, perceivably.
Yeah. It's not a huge, I think for most people, that's not like the killer feature, but for enthusiasts, that could be a big deal.
Oh, there's my doorbell.
Speaking of the devil.
Speaking of the devil, yeah. That is actually one of the cool things. I was just going to say that when someone rings your doorbell if you have the Apple TV open, it'll actually open to the doorbell, right? And it comes up on the screen. It's super cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it is. It is very neat. I'm wondering how many more times my son's going to ring the doorbell right now. It's only been twice. Whoops. Let's see. Yeah, there he is. Okay, so let's see here. I think the only other thing I wanted to talk about, unless you feel differently, Holden, was the Apple adding FaceTime framework to Apple TV HomePod speakers. Now, one of the really cool features inside of the Apple TV and the HomePod is the ability to, or sorry, let me start that over. There's always been this gap between the HomePod and what is, kind of like the de facto, I would say the de facto unit for your house, which is, I think, the Google Home or the Google Nest, the Nest Home, where you get that hub experience. You walk up, it plays picture frames or plays pictures for you inside of a picture frame, and it has a limited number of apps that you can use and interact with, and it'll play video. This is, in my opinion, the way that Apple, I thought that maybe Apple would have went to, but I would love to see a HomePod with the ability to go ahead and display some type of content, whether it's your photo album, because that's where all my photos are, whether it's some type of apps that are integrated inside of, HomeKit, that there's this speaker / screen where you can interact with it. Maybe that's where they go in terms of HomePod speakers next. They go into they go after the Google Homes of the world. And if I read this article correctly, you would be able to do FaceTime calling from there as well. I mean, I think that's a great feature to add into a HomePod for all of these. This is a really bad mock-up, in my opinion. Sorry.
Yeah, the mock-up. I was just thinking the mock-up is like a classic, concept photo for future Apple products that's not out yet, like the rotary phone iPods before the iPhone came out and all that, or like the iPad with Mac OS 10 on it. That was funny. Yeah, I think this is an interesting rumor. I'm kind of caught. I don't know if I believe it though. I think that it'd be a good kitchen device where you're doing a recipe or something, you're working in a recipe or cooking, and maybe there's an app that you can see on your HomePod to help guide you through the recipe, and you interact with Siri to swipe to the next step or something like that, so you don't have to touch the HomePod with your dirty hands as you're cooking. There are definitely utilities there that could work. I don't, the FaceTime thing is the weird thing for me. I don't know how much people would want to use that. I feel like we've seen these products. We've seen, I think Facebook had their portal, and I think Amazon had something similar too with the Echo Show or something like that. But there was a version of the camera, I think. And I don't know if people want to interact with video chat in that way when their phone's kind of their communication device. My theory on this is that they've changed the frameworks for FaceTime and for iMessage as well, and because the HomePod runs tvOS, technically it runs tvOS, it just was lumped in and included. So maybe there's something with the Apple TV where you can plug a camera into it, so you can get Skype or Cisco or something like that working on your Apple TV. Maybe there's something there, and it just kind of happened to come to HomePod too. I don't know. This is a weird one for me.
Yeah. You bring up a very good point, and I don't know if that's common knowledge that HomePod doesn't run iOS as it relates to the iPhone. It runs a version or a variant of tvOS, which that is, I guess, unique in itself, where it would be very cool to have, whether it's iMessage or whether it's whether it's iMessage or FaceTime, the ability to go ahead and make get that content personalized. But how I could see it maybe being implemented, where on the HomePod Mini you say, "Hey Shlomo, what's my update?" or "Hey Shlomo, what are my messages?" And because of the identification that she makes, or she being Siri makes to you, she knows what your messages are, where she then could read you your messages from that screen, or from that she could show you, display your messages. You could make a FaceTime audio call from that. Maybe it's not about FaceTime video though. I mean, maybe that's just the caveat.
Yeah, because I imagine thinking about how that might look inside their code base. It could just be there's the FaceTime framework, and within the FaceTime framework, that's where you have FaceTime video and FaceTime audio. So they make adjustments to FaceTime audio. The framework is updated for across the board for FaceTime, and it would be updated for Apple TV as well as HomePod. There's kind of it's possible. But here's, the to play devil's advocate, to play with all possibilities. Before HomePod was announced, I remember Phil Spencer saying that they weren't going to do a speaker that didn't have any sort of visual feedback. Now, it's possible that he just meant how the display on the top of the HomePod kind of lights up, and that's what he meant. So that Siri's responding to you. He's kind of taking a shot at like Google Home at the time. Google Home even had the lights on the top and had like a visual feedback to the same degree that HomePod made. So maybe they've been working on something video based with HomePod for a while. Maybe that's the more expensive HomePod Pro, if you will, that has a video attached to it. But until there's kind of more substantial rumors, it could just be that they're planning some sort of FaceTime audio update, and it runs Apple TV OS.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess technically, to your point, Apple Watch is capable of running or Apple Watch or Watch OS has the FaceTime framework in it, even though it's FaceTime audio, right? So that's a good point. That there again, I don't know. I would love to, because I don't have or because I don't want to leave my Apple TV running all day. I love to have some type of display where the photo frame. I really like that. I think it's probably one of the best features of, because you get this discoverability. And what's nice is that all that rework that they just did into Photos last year or maybe the year before, I don't remember what year it was, where the moments that get curated for you and they send them to you daily. If you have that turned on, that would be really great there to have that those reminders.
Yeah, it definitely would be a beautiful product to have, just like a gorgeous Retina display on your counter showing you, remember this 3 years ago, and like here's your beach photos from 3 years ago. Like that would be kind of cool to have that like integration with iCloud Photos, and there's a lot that they could definitely do with that. That would be tasteful.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. I wonder, well, never mind. I was saying, I wonder how like if you wanted to prototype this, how easy would it be? Like if you want to take like an Apple TV and build it into a screen, like that would be funny. Okay, Holden, is there anything else that you want to talk about this evening?
I think that covers it. I think we got it all.
Yeah, I think we got it all. Holden, let me know, where can everyone find you at?
I am on a video game podcast called Respawning Fire. New episodes are out every Tuesday, and we do Twitch on on Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. And I'm just on Twitter at Holden DePardo and at Respawning Fire as well.
Holden, I didn't have a chance to listen to your podcast that was just released, but it says you think Animal Crossing is garbage. What was the show title?
Holden thinks Animal Crossing sucks. It's totally like a clickbait thing, but like I'm just really upset about the most recent update. I expected too much for the anniversary update, and to find out that it was a cake and that it's just an anniversary cake, I'm like, that's dumb. It's so stupid. I wanted more. I wanted a new Nook's Cranny. I wanted like an upgrade there. I wanted new shops, and I was just being ungrateful. And then also they're not changing Bunny Day. It's the same dumb eggs from last year. It's the same stupid zipper. And I'm like, that was so heavily criticized. Why? I don't want to go fishing and I catch an egg instead of a fish. I don't want to, dig up a fossil and find out it's a dumb egg. Like, I don't want to deal with that again. So I'm just like, I'm annoyed. I was really annoyed and went on a very long, passionate rant.
I got the sense of you being annoyed, which by me asking the question. I have not been playing for a year yet. I think I got my Nintendo Switch in April, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not familiar with Bunny Day, though I get what it means. I'll have to listen to that. I'll let you know what I think for sure.
Yeah. Oh, it might be the most passionate I've ever been on the podcast.
Wait. More passionate? Like ever? Like more passionate? The most passionate ever?
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't compared every single time I've been passionate with the podcast, but I felt pretty passionate. I honestly felt a little like silly being like, oh my God, I'm like ranting about Animal Crossing to this degree.
That is awesome. Holden, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Everyone, thank you very much. We will talk to you guys in the next one. Have a good night.